Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Let's Taste with the Intrepid Wino. My name is James Garesbrook, and I was very, very excited to sit down finally with John Harris of Mitchell Harris Wines recently. Check out that episode of the Vincast podcast, which will be coming out soon, if it hasn't already. And it was great to find out about John's journey as a winemaker and talking about where the Mitchell Harris story came from and what they're doing, some of the exciting stuff they're doing based in Ballarat. And John was very kind in bringing some bottles of wine for me, which I am really excited to be opening and sharing my impressions of here on Let's Taste with the Intrepid Wino. Now, the first wine that they made, if you listen to the podcast, was a sparkling wine, the Sabre. That was the very first wine, but of course they couldn't release it for several years afterwards because it needs to rest on lees. So what I'm looking at here is the 2013 Sabre, which they sell, which recommend retails about $42. And it is a Chardonnay Pinot Noir blend from the Macedon Ranges and also the Pyrenees. And so it was tirage, so as far as, when it went into bottle in September of 2013, and it wasn't disgorged until 2017, so it spent a fair amount of time resting on lees. One of the things we talked about, we used to work together at Domaine Chandon, so we've got some experience as far as sparkling method traditionnel production, and one of the kind of things about sparkling wine in that style is that there is quite a long lead time from harvest to releasing the wine. So John, I think just before he left, was in charge of the sparkling wine production, so very much an experienced hand when it comes to bubbles. So let's have a look at the 2013 vintage. Very classic autolysis characters, lovely leesy, bready, crusty, biscuity notes, very subtle citrus, a little bit of orange peel, some green apples in there as well. Lovely fine bead, absolutely textbook when it comes to high quality Australian sparkling. Let's taste. Vibrant. There's some good depth there. It's not unusual for Australian bubbles in general to be quite neutral in terms of the fruit components, but there's some nice kind of juiciness to it here. I think it is even possible that John actually puts some of the base wine into wood, because there is kind of an oaky sort of toastiness to it, not just the lees derived toasty, nutty, creamy sort of biscuity characters. Still good acidity, quite fine. Yeah, quite lovely and generous in the mouth. It's very much a food style of bubbles. You could easily have this as an aperitif, but I think it would be better with certain foods because it does have a little bit of richness to it, a little bit of creaminess, some nice texture as well. So really, really solid bubbles, and I think for the price you are not paying enough, in my opinion. I think it is well worth the $42. The second wine I'm going to look at is another wine that they have got a very strong reputation for. It is a Sauvignon Blanc made in Fumé style. So Fumé or Fumé Blanc is a style of wine that you typically find in France that is Sauvignon Blanc made through barrel fermentation and barrel aging with lees contact often. Apparently John's inspiration for this one was from Cloudy Bay to cocoa, which was pioneered by Kevin Judd back in the day. And so Sauvignon Blanc, when they first started making Mitchell Harris wines, It was very, very popular, but the style was very much stainless steel fermentation, very simple. A lot of New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs, as there still are, and he wanted to make something that was a little bit more complex and a little bit more food friendly. So recommended retail, or what they charge at Mitchell Harris, is about $27 for the 2016 vintage. So let's have a look at what it shows. It's not super smoky or toasty on the nose. It's very much about a lovely kind of ripe gooseberry, you know, just a little bit of sort of quince, a hint of grassiness, just a tiny amount of sort of smokiness. Yeah, lovely kind of green, white fruits. Really, again, textbook Sauvignon Blanc, but not in a kind of really aggressive way. Let's taste. Starting to see the barrel characters more on the palate. It does have, you know, a slightly richer, more textured structure in the mouth. The fruits are very, very consistent, but there is a slightly riper profile. It's definitely not heading into more tropical or exotic fruits. It is still in the lovely kind of fresh white and green fruits. It's possibly not as kind of full as other Fumé styles I have seen. Certainly, I think the Kiwi or Marlborough styles that are made like this tend to be quite full. This is not. This is actually quite subtle and elegant. I like it. So it sort of sits in that lovely middle ground where you could happily have this just as a nice, clean, fresh white wine, which is what a lot of people choose Sauvignon Blanc for, and something with a little bit more going for it. You could have with food, but. I think if you are looking for something a little bit different when it comes to Sauvignon Blanc, this is a really good introduction to an alternative style. The third and final wine is also from the 2016 vintage, and it was the other wine that they released when they first launched Mitchell Harris. It is Shiraz from the Pyrenees region, and you know, the Pyrenees has a very, very strong reputation, even though it's one of the most important places for sparkling production. Probably more in terms of growing the grapes, that was a more historic thing. Now it's possibly a little bit too warm for sparkling, but it's always had a very strong reputation for Shiraz and Cabernet Sauvignon, and that was something that they've been working with since the beginning of Mitchell Harris. So I'm really excited to see what the 2016 Shiraz has to offer. Very, very vibrant, really exuberant fruits and floral notes. Just the semblance of a sort of a mentholy, peppery spice, but plenty of blueberries, blackberries, or you know, some sort of ripe cranberries as well. Quite floral like that. Lovely, very inviting. $35 recommended retail for this one. Let's taste. Fresh. On you know, the first impression I had on the palate is it's very, very light, and it actually builds on the palate, which was quite interesting. Really, really classic fruit, varietal fruit characters. Not super intense. The tannins are quite subtle and supple. There's just a little bit of sort of barrel-derived, almost toasty sweetness on the back of the palate. Yeah, look, that's a very, very sound, solid, coolish climate Shiraz. It's probably lacking a little bit more personality and power. It is very, very light and fresh. I think a lot of people might kind of find that on the safe side when it comes to Shiraz, but I think it's about the climate and the way they're making it. It's being made with a very delicate touch. The bubbles by far is the strongest of the three, and I really like the Sauvignon Blanc. The Shiraz is delicious. It's fresh. Again, it sits in that nice point between just being a really solid, very, very good drinking wine that doesn't necessarily need food to, you can pair it with some foods, but for me, probably the winner, the bubbles, I think the Sauvignon Blanc is well worth the price. The Shiraz is very, very good, but it's a competitive sort of price point when it comes to Australian wine. And Shiraz, $35. There are a lot of different examples, and there are some very, very good ones out there. So I do recommend, like I say, listening to that episode of the podcast with John Harris, because it was great to catch up with him. And I do highly recommend checking out Mitchell Harris Wines. Go to Ballarat and visit their amazing sort of cellar door bar restaurant kind of thing they've got in town. It's a really great place to try their wines, but also have a good feed, have a good time. And John's usually there, so you can introduce yourself and let him know that you saw his wines here on YouTube, or if you listen to it on the podcast. Thank you, of course, to John for very kindly donating some samples for me to taste. And I'm always open to trying new wines, so please do get in contact with me via my website if you'd like to submit samples. If you like this video, hit the like button, make sure you subscribe to the Intrepid Wino YouTube channel, share this video on social media, and please do leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know what you thought of the podcast episode. If you'd like to find out more about my stuff, head to intrepidwino.com. Lots of different content there, and lots of different ways of getting in contact with me as well. But guys, until next time, cheers.